The mother clearly can't afford proper representation. My ex-husband's $850 an hour attorney announced to the courtroom with barely concealed satisfaction, gesturing toward me sitting alone at my table with nothing but a yellow legal pad and a pen from the bank. Your Honor, we request expedited proceedings given the obvious disparity in resources. My client is prepared to resolve this quickly and mercifully for everyone involved. I sat there in my Target cardigan and department store dress, looking exactly like what they expected. A struggling single mother who'd been blindsided by a divorce from a successful surgeon, now facing a custody battle I couldn't possibly win against his wealth and his legal firepower. For 6 weeks, I'd shown up alone, stuttered through statements, asked confused questions that made opposing counsel roll his eyes, and played the role of an overwhelmed woman drowning in a system designed to crush people like me. When we returned to court for the final hearing, the woman who walked in beside me was Theodora Hartwick, undefeated in 89 custody cases, feared by every family law attorney in the state. My ex-husband's face went completely pale. Let me tell you about the custody battle I was never actually losing and the husband who never saw it coming. My marriage to Dr. Jonathan Mercer lasted 12 years. He was a cardiac surgeon, brilliant, successful, and absolutely convinced that his intellect and income made him superior to everyone around him, including me. I'd been an elementary school teacher when we married, a profession he'd tolerated as quaint, while making clear that his career was the one that actually mattered. The divorce wasn't my choice. Jonathan had found someone younger, someone who looked better at hospital galas, someone who didn't remind him of the years he'd spent becoming successful before he was actually successful. I want full custody of Sophie, he'd announced when he filed. You can have visitation. Our daughter was 8 years old. She was my entire world. And Jonathan thought he could take her from me because he had more money. The first attorney I consulted gave me discouraging news. Family courts try to be equitable, but resources matter. He can afford to drag this out, hire investigators, bring in expert witnesses. Unless you have significant funds. I didn't, not obviously. My teacher's salary was modest. My savings depleted by the years of supporting Jonathan's career while he supported his ego. But I had something Jonathan didn't know about. My grandmother had left me a trust when she died. A small fortune accumulated over decades of careful investing, held in accounts Jonathan had never seen because I'd never mentioned them. The trust had been established before our marriage, managed by attorneys who reported only to me, completely separate from any assets Jonathan knew existed. The amount, $2.3 million. Enough to hire the best custody attorney in the country. I just chose to hire her quietly. Theodora Hartwick didn't advertise. She didn't need to. Her reputation preceded her. 89 custody cases, 89 victories, a track record that made opposing counsel consider settlement the moment they heard her name. She was also a former family court judge who understood exactly how the system worked and exactly how to work it. When I called her office, I was told her retainer was $150,000. I paid it in cash. I need something unusual, I told Theodora at our first meeting. Unusual how? My husband is a narcissist. If he thinks he's winning, he'll get arrogant. He'll overreach. He'll say things in court that reveal who he really is. Theodora studied me with the piercing assessment of someone who'd spent 30 years reading people in courtrooms. You want to set a trap. I want him to think I'm helpless. I want his lawyer to think there's no competition. And when they're completely confident, completely exposed, I want you to walk in and destroy them. A slow smile spread across her face. I think we're going to work very well together. The strategy was meticulous. For the preliminary hearings, the discovery phase, the motions, the procedural battles, I would appear alone. Theodora's firm would file appearances under a junior associate's name, someone Jonathan's legal team wouldn't recognize, someone who would seem like budget representation at best. I would act overwhelmed, confused, scared. I would let Jonathan's attorney steamroll me in minor proceedings while Theodora collected information. And when we reached the custody hearing itself, when Jonathan was fully committed to his false sense of superiority, we would reveal exactly what he was facing. 6 weeks of performance. I arrived at court in modest clothing, clutching my yellow notepad, asking the judge questions that made me seem unprepared. Jonathan's attorney, a man named Bradley Ashworth who charged $850 per hour, treated me with condescending patience that barely masked his contempt. Your Honor, Mrs. Mercer seems unclear on the discovery procedures. Perhaps we could simplify the documentation requirements given her situation. I thanked him for his kindness, which made Jonathan smirk. I fumbled through responses to motions, agreeing to deadlines I supposedly didn't understand. I let them believe I was drowning. Meanwhile, Theodora was building our case. Her investigators documented Jonathan's actual parenting involvement, which was minimal. His nanny raised Sophie while he worked 18-hour days and attended conferences in exotic locations. His new girlfriend had met our daughter exactly twice. They documented his temper. The incidents hospital staff had witnessed. The complaint a nurse had filed that mysteriously disappeared from HR records. They documented his finances, including the accounts he'd hidden from me, the assets he'd failed to disclose, the income he'd underreported on our divorce filings. Jonathan thought he was preparing for a battle against an unarmed opponent. He was actually handing us ammunition. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. Jonathan arrived with Bradley Ashworth and 2 junior associates, a show of legal force designed to intimidate. He wore a $4,000 suit and the expression of a man who'd already won. I arrived alone at first. Your Honor, Ashworth began, we've prepared comprehensive documentation of Dr. Mercer's superior ability to provide. The courtroom doors opened. Theodora Hartwick walked in. The reaction was immediate. Ashworth's confident posture collapsed. The color drained from Jonathan's face. Even the judge, who'd presided over family cases for 20 years, sat up straighter. Theodora, the judge said, I didn't see your name on the filings. I'm entering my appearance on behalf of Mrs. Mercer, Your Honor. My associate handled preliminary matters, but I'll be conducting today's hearing personally. Ashworth turned to me with an expression of pure disbelief. You've been represented this entire time? I've been very well represented, I replied calmly. I just wanted to see what your client would do when he thought no one was watching. What Jonathan had done was damning. Theodora presented evidence methodically, devastatingly. Financial records showing Jonathan had hidden over $800,000 in assets during divorce proceedings, a fraud on the court that carried serious consequences. Testimony from household staff describing his absence from Sophie's daily life. The dinners missed, the recitals skipped, the bedtimes delegated to employees while he worked or socialized. Records from his hospital showing complaints about his temperament. Shouting at nurses, throwing instruments in surgery, behavior that painted a picture of a man unable to control his emotions under stress. And most damaging of all, recordings. Jonathan had a habit of leaving his phone recording during our conversations. He'd done it to catch me saying something he could use against me. Instead, he'd captured himself threatening to bury me if I didn't accept his custody terms. Calling me names in front of Sophie. Telling our daughter that Mommy is trying to hurt Daddy, in language designed to manipulate an 8-year-old's loyalty. Parental alienation. Emotional abuse. Evidence that destroyed his carefully constructed image of the devoted father. Your Honor, Theodora said. Dr. Mercer believed he was facing an unarmed opponent. He revealed exactly who he is when he thought there were no consequences. Ashworth attempted damage control. Your Honor, Mrs. Mercer deliberately deceived the court about her representation. Mrs. Mercer was under no obligation to disclose her legal strategy to opposing counsel, Theodora interrupted. Pro-se appearances during discovery are perfectly legal. What's not legal is hiding assets during divorce proceedings, making false statements to the court, or attempting to manipulate a minor child against her mother. This is entrapment. This is consequences, Mr. Ashworth. Your client felt safe being himself because he thought no one powerful was watching. We were watching. The judge's ruling was comprehensive. Full custody to me. Jonathan received supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of court-ordered anger management and co-parenting counseling. His hidden assets were ordered disclosed, and the court imposed sanctions for fraud that would significantly impact his financial position. The recordings of his parental alienation attempts were entered into permanent record, available if he ever tried to modify custody. Dr. Mercer, the judge said directly, you came into this courtroom believing your resources made you entitled to dictate terms. You've discovered that resources can be hidden, that courts see through arrogance, and that underestimating an opponent is a serious error. Jonathan said nothing. His face had the hollow expression of someone whose invincibility had been thoroughly dismantled. He confronted me in the hallway afterward. You tricked me. You pretended to be helpless. I pretended to be what you expected. A struggling single mom with no options. That's who you thought I was for 12 years, isn't it? Just the teacher, just the mother, just the support system for your brilliant career. I would have been reasonable if I'd known. You would have been strategic. You would have hidden your behavior, presented a careful image, been the perfect devoted father for the court. I met his eyes. I needed the court to see who you really are, not who you perform as. This isn't over. It is over. You have supervised visits with your daughter because the court determined you can't be trusted alone with her. Every recording, every testimony, every piece of evidence is in permanent record. If you try to modify custody, everything comes back. Theodora stood beside me as Jonathan walked away. That was satisfying, she admitted. In 89 cases, I've never had a client who understood strategy the way you do. I learned from 12 years of marriage to a manipulator. I learned how he thought, what he expected, how to become invisible while planning something bigger. The inheritance, did he really never know? Jonathan never asked about my life before him. He assumed I had nothing because he wanted to believe I was nothing. My grandmother died before our wedding, and I just never mentioned the trust. Wise woman. She was. She told me once. Wealth that nobody knows about is the only wealth that's truly yours. She was right. Sophie is 12 now. The custody arrangement has held. Jonathan completed his counseling, moved to standard supervision, and eventually to regular visitation. He's better now, or at least more careful. The experience humbled him in ways I didn't think possible. We don't communicate except about Sophie. That's healthier for everyone. My daughter doesn't know the details of the custody battle. She just knows that Mom fought for her, that the court decided Mom was the best primary parent, and that Dad loves her even though he makes mistakes sometimes. That's enough for now. The full truth can wait until she's older. I think about those 6 weeks sometimes. Sitting alone at that table, pretending to be helpless while Theodora's team built an airtight case. Letting Jonathan's attorney patronize me. Letting Jonathan believe he'd already won. The hardest part wasn't the acting, it was the patience. Waiting while they underestimated me. Trusting that the strategy would work. But Jonathan had underestimated me for 12 years. 6 more weeks was nothing. The mother clearly can't afford proper representation. Bradley Ashworth said those words with such confidence, such certainty that resources equaled victory. He never considered that the struggling single mom might be hiding something. He never considered that weakness could be strategy. He never considered Theodora Hartwick. Some battles are won with force. Others are won by letting your opponent believe they've already won, then revealing that they never understood the battlefield. Jonathan thought he was fighting a woman with nothing. He was fighting a woman with everything, including the patience to let him destroy himself.